Face it, we all procrastinate sometimes. If you're like most people, that feeling of putting off a mountain of work until the very last minute probably sounds all too familiar. It seems that, for a lack of a better expression, that avoiding difficult tasks are a part of human nature. No one likes doing hard, tiring, monotonous things, so sometimes we delay it until the very last second, then scramble to finish it with our anxiety and fear as our sole source of motivation. In fact, I procrastinated when preparing this very presentation. Here are some pictures that I took when I suddenly felt the urge to go on a nice, long, relaxing walk the very day before the first draft for the speech was due. Unfortunately, the most difficult things in life are also often the most necessary. And leaving things until the very last second will probably cause you a great amount of undue stress, exhaustion, and likely hinder the quality of whatever you're trying to finish. With the rise of the internet, social media, and the algorithms that are getting better and better every day at knowing how to keep you and I entertained, it seems that procrastination is becoming a problem that's harder and harder to avoid, which is not especially good news for Gen Z. Fortunately, however, like most problems, procrastination is a habit that can be overcome. But before we discuss how to overcome procrastination, I think that it is helpful that we first understand why we procrastinate in the first place. If you're like most people, we can all relate to leaving stuff until the very last second, even if the stuff in question is something that's very important. It seems as if it's entirely against our self-interest to leave it until the very last second. So why do we do it anyway? The answer lies in the amygdala. This part of the brain is responsible for the processing of emotions, in particular, the emotions of fear and anxiety. When the brain detects a threat, such as, let's say, a tiger or a snake, activity in this region is heightened. Now, what's interesting is that studies have shown that this very same part of the brain can also light up when there's not a conventional threat like a snake or a tiger, but instead when there's a very difficult task, like for instance, an important paper due the next day, or a test that you didn't study for. When the brain perceives this difficult task, activity in this region is heightened, releasing hormones such as adrenaline that make you feel stressed and induces the fight, or in this case, flight response. This stress can override your more rational prefrontal cortex, making you resort to doing tasks such as aimlessly scrolling your phone. Or suddenly feeling the urge to deep clean your room for the next 2 hours. That is your brain subconsciously trying to get rid of that distressing feeling. So, in short, it can be said that we procrastinate when we perceive a task as being threatening. Think about it. You're much more likely to procrastinate on writing that important paper than, let's say, a more mundane task, like doing the dishes. In its essence, it can also be said that procrastination is less of a time management problem and more of an emotional management problem. So now that we've discussed a bit about why we procrastinate, what can we do about it? While many strategies can be taken, it is important to remember that everyone is different, and it is crucial to experiment and find whatever works for you. However, here are some tips or strategies that I, for one, have found particularly helpful. Tip 1. Break down bigger tasks into smaller ones. Thinking about a big task in its entirety can be daunting and intimidating, creating more resistance and making it harder for you to get started. By breaking down a bigger task into smaller tasks, the task seems less daunting, and as we previously established, you perceive the task as less threatening, making it easier for you to get started. For instance, a monumental task that most teenagers will encounter is applying to college. While this task may seem very daunting at first, it becomes less so when you break it down into smaller tasks, such as deciding which colleges you want to go to, researching the requirements, asking teachers to write letters of recommendation, and finally writing your application. You can even break down these tasks into smaller subtasks. The point here is to break down bigger tasks into smaller tasks so that they seem less threatening, making it easier for you to get started. Tip 2, eliminate potential distractions. Oftentimes, raw willpower and discipline are not enough to keep you focused, and you will have to get rid of your distractions in a more direct manner. One major distraction for Gen Z are their phones. Now, just as how it is easy for a drug addict to rebound when they can see their needle, it is important to put the needle away where you cannot see it. So, in a literal sense, this means putting your phone away somewhere where you cannot see it, such as in your drawer or in another room. In my case, I just like to keep my phone under my blankets, but whatever works for you. Another major source of distraction for teenagers is social media. Now, what I found particularly helpful are what's called site blockers, such as BlogSite here, which temporarily renders access to social media sites inaccessible. This makes it easier for you to stay focused when there's an important task at hand. Tip 3 would be to get started as soon as possible. Maybe your room is messy. Maybe your desk is unorganized and dirty. Maybe you are putting off writing a literary analysis because you haven't even borrowed the book yet. All of these things will make you subconsciously want to put off doing your task and leaving it for later. Believe it or not, your work environment and small changes to your work environment can in fact make a huge difference. In physics, just as how static friction is greater than dynamic friction, it is way easier to keep going than getting started. They say that the hardest part about doing something is getting started. And this is especially true in this case. Getting started as soon as possible will give you more ideas and make the task seem less daunting. As we previously established, this lowers your perception of the task's difficulty, which makes it easier for you to get started on the task at hand. Some important things to keep in mind is to not worry too much about being a perfectionist. Ironically, this makes the thing that you do less good, since the chances of your procrastination increase more because you have such a strong desire to make said thing perfect. They say that perfect is the enemy of good, and this cannot be closer to the truth. In addition, sometimes if you find yourself in a slump and just can't get started no matter what, consider taking a break or going for a walk. Sometimes you're procrastinating simply because you are burnt out, and it is important to take care of your own mental health as well. What I personally think is the most important thing to keep in mind is that everyone at some point has and will procrastinate. It is a part of human nature, and as we previously discussed, it is practically hardwired into our biology. You will inevitably procrastinate again at some point, and when that happens, don't beat yourself up for it or wallow in shame and regret. Just do what needs to be done with what time is left, and do not feel guilty. That will only perpetuate the vicious cycle of procrastination. I don't do anything, so I feel guilty about not doing anything. Because I feel guilty, I doubt myself. And because I doubt myself, I feel helpless. And because I feel helpless, in turn, I don't do anything. Forgive your mistakes, for we are all human. Perhaps this is the only way to break the vicious cycle of procrastination. Many things in life do not have a deadline. That hobby that you've always wanted to pick up but never found the time to. That person that you've always wanted to talk to but never found the chance to. That activity that has always interested you, but you just can't seem to start doing it. When are you going to do those things? Tomorrow? Next week? Next month? Next year? Never? It is not only normal, but also expected for young people especially to face these dilemmas. Overcoming procrastination will always be an unending struggle that you will have to encounter again and again and again. But rest assured, it is most definitely a worthwhile one. Thank you for listening.